Welcome, everyone, to the Children's General Assembly September Summit, live from the capital of children, Billund, Denmark, those in the audience and those watching from abroad. My name is Lila Kamir. I'm a 14-year-old from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, in the United States.
And I'm Cameron Davis. I'm a 17-year-old from Toronto, Canada, Ontario to be precise, and we're your hosts for the live show. We're so excited to have you all here and making time to listen to youth voices from across the globe. Welcome to the Children's General Assembly September Summit 2022.
Over the past 6 months, 80 children and young people from 42 countries, covering all continents, have been organizing and refining ideas on topics they are passionate about. We children are the future, and our thinking can make a developed world and a better tomorrow. As we bring a close to this monumental week, we'll be listening to the discussion of important world issues and their solutions on how people all over the world can improve together as a community. Over the past 6 months, everyone has had fun and have made friends for life. Everyone has also worked hard and learned a lot to come to a range of ideas to show you, to inspire and share with the world. What you are about to hear now is the result of the hard work together.
But first, let's sing the Children's General Assembly song, a song written and composed especially for the Children's General Assembly by a local children's sing and songwriter group from Kulturskolen in the capital of children, Billund, Denmark. Please join us in singing the Children's General Assembly song now.
Listen to my voice, I'm calling out, so let my song be heard. Listen to my heart, it beats for change, and I know that my voice may not be loud, but I don't stand alone. Assemble, we will reach the crowd, make our wishes known. Listen to my words, they're powerful, and they can be ignored. Listen to the thrill of what's to come. We're all united now, and I don't stand alone. Assemble, we will reach the crowd, make our wishes known.
And of course, I've been reading your some of the preparations that you're working on, and I remain impressed of your engagement. And I just want to let you know that I'm excited to follow you, and I'm excited to support your work as you grow and as your initiative grow into the future. So it's a very big honor for me to be here today. So I think what you are doing, both of you 14 years old, I think it is amazing, and please keep on doing it. And with your global network, I think it is amazing.
Do you believe providing a high-quality education to as many people as possible is the first step towards solving global issues?
We should remember that the education, one thing is the education in the classroom, but then there's also the education outside the classroom, the learning that you embark upon. And I think what you're doing here is part of that learning. So you're not just confining yourself. I'm talking to the two of you here and all your fellow students from around the world that you've been collaborating with so intensely over the past months here. Not just that is happening in the classroom, but you actually also engage in, you could say, more informal educational learning communities like this one, where you actually inspire each other and you learn a lot on that journey. So I think we should not forget the, let's call it the informal learning community. So I want to congratulate you, both of you, that you've actually done that, and that you are bringing that forward and participating so well. It's amazing.
You've talked about business schools and university. So how you believe that business schools and universities can help tackling the SDGs, but how exactly do they help?
Yes, I think that we as business schools and as universities are very oriented towards teaching very specific disciplines with very valuable knowledge, and we need to keep on doing that. But there's something else we also need to do, and that is to inspire youth in also, being the best, knowledge-wise, but also to inspire youth to engage, you could say, in interpersonal skills, in social skills, in even emotional skills, because we know that we've seen that during the pandemic, it matters a lot for how we survive and how we engage with one another, the kind of ways we interact and we behave towards each other in organizations, at the workplace, and even in our studies as yourselves. So we need to have the social interpersonal skills, the emotional skills, and also the creative skills as part of the education space. And I think that is something we need to think very carefully about. We need to listen to you also. How do we do that? How do we bring those other skills, if you like, how do we bring them into play? And how do we help create a context in the school, and perhaps even outside the school, for how we can encourage and help you to better immobilize and become, you could sort of say, those reflective learners that the world needs. Once you have worked with, the Children's General Assembly for this year, don't leave us, Please keep up the good work and keep the dialogue, keep the talk amongst yourselves going, even though you go 15, 16, 17, and even beyond when you enter the universities and schools that I'm leading right now. Remember that that talk globally and the respect for each other. Very important.
So, dear audience, dear viewers, a warm welcome here on stage to the first of two debates live here in Billund. My name is Christopher Mojell Juhl. I'll be your moderator. I come from the non-profit Drive Foundation that works on ensuring quality education for all children. But more importantly, I have some really fantastic guests with me today. First and foremost, we have the South African ambassador, the Honorable Ms. Magubane. I pronounced that almost correctly, I think. So a warm welcome to you. Thanks for making the trip. And then we have Daniel here from Denmark and Mangara from South Africa. So warm welcome to them. So we are here on stage to talk about the Children's General Assembly, and we will discuss topics that will be raised in this year's manifesto. But right now, we would like to just take a step back to last year's event, the last year's assembly. And let me start with you, Daniel. You were there last year, so let me ask you, why are you here again? And what have you learned from last year? What has happened?
Well, though I may be here again, it is playing a very different role than it was last year. Last year, I was a representative for, I think it was Group E, discussing how children and also countries can better cooperate with each other. But this year, I was instead a part of the Children's General Assembly Forum, which instead works more in the background to work with different events, which, although they relate to the Children's General Assembly, don't necessarily coincide with it. So I'm here this year essentially just so I can say that I have my voice, I have my input recognized in this assembly, just maybe in a different way than last year.
Very nice with the transition. So thank you, Daniel. I'm curious about, last year, remember, there was all these suggestions of what we should do. Margaret, can you tell, do you have any concrete actions that have been done since last year?
Actually, yes. One of our members, Hannah, from last year, she has implemented gender-neutral bathrooms in her school. And on my side, I would say that I have spread the word. I've tried to spread the word. I was interviewed by a very big radio station back home, so I'd say that's one of the specific things that we've done.
Well done. Well done. Good. So the joint manifesto from last year, I remember that you were focused on how do we ensure children's rights for every child around the world. Just remind us all, why is that so important?
Children's rights, right? Children's rights are human rights because children are human as well. I think children's rights are just there to keep a stable life for them, to keep them safe, to keep them healthy, and to make sure that their future is stable and it's there. So I just think children's rights are just there for us to have reassurance that our future is still brighter than it is, and that we do have a voice and we will be heard.
Thank you.
Having children's rights, yeah, there you go, right?
No, go, Daniel.
Having children's rights has also helped us create events like these, like the Children's General Assembly, where we can actively take part in the discussions with politicians and be able to discuss the ideas which we are enthusiastic and passionate about. And that is something which we wouldn't be able to do without children's rights, which is also why we continue to fight for more opportunities like these for children all over the world who may not have access to these opportunities.
So it's clear that your hearts and your minds are full of ideas and suggestions to us grown-ups. And on this side, Ms. Ambassador, you also took part of the General Assembly last year here in Billund, where we heard the presentation of the manifesto. You presented on behalf of 78 children and youth from around the world. And you have followed the children since then, yes, both at home and here in Denmark and elsewhere. So, given that, what do you think the youth of this world can help governments and the UN? How can they help them achieve their goals?
I think the youth should be their own voice, yeah, and speak for themselves. They must also be represented in parliaments and at the United Nations. There also should be a body or a ministry that is responsible for youth matters. And again, on an ongoing basis, the youth must develop policies that represent their aspirations and ambitions, which could be tabled in parliaments, the United Nations, and possibly have them implemented, because they do have aspirations and ambitions that they'd like to see, and these are future generations of tomorrow.
Thank you. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Good.
Absolutely.
Now, in the manifesto of last year, I do remember that you stressed the importance of education. I think we'll come back to that later. And you could ask the question, what should the role of education be in a child's life? And that question, of course, I could ask it to the three of you. But two of our other assembly participants, Gael, is that how you pronounce it? No. Thank you. From South Africa and Sarah from Pakistan have asked that specific question to the Minister for Social Development in South Africa. Let us hear her answer.
It is former President Nelson Mandela who said, and I quote, "No child in Africa, and in fact anywhere in the world, should be denied education. The state has the central responsibility in the provision of education and training opportunities."
Thank you so much for your answer, Minister. I think it's really great to create forums and other communities to support the children. I think that is definitely a way to go forward and others can take inspiration from. And I will now hand it over to Kaukelo.
Thank you, Sarah. The next question, Minister, is what interdepartmental and international systems do you have in place that promote equal and standardized social development as well as education?
NPOs and NGOs are not just about supporting people on the ground. They also take the opportunity of doing an oversight and checking whether government itself is really implementing the decisions that it said it would do, the programs that government intends to do in order to change the lives of children.
Do you have any advice for future generations of children that are to come?
Don't keep it to yourself. Say it out. And if they feel you are wrong in what they're saying, let them convince you why they say you are wrong. I think that parents, grandparents, communities, different structures must be able to listen to to children today, because children have got a say, they've got a voice. We must create a conducive environment for them, because if we don't, then we discover that they didn't have all the necessary information. They took action that is not very helpful to them, and then we blame them tomorrow. Let us engage, and for me, the engagement starts with the engagement at family level.
Mr. Ambassador, a strong message from your home country, I must say. It was mentioned, Nelson Mandela was mentioned, and he had, of course, a strong focus on South Africa, but also on the entire world. So my question to you is, how can countries collaborate more effectively to find solutions to these global issues that we have? And on top of that, what are the obstacles that you face on a day-to-day basis on achieving that?
Well, countries must recognize and accept the United Nations as a primary global organization that is responsible to help all of us in the world. And again, countries must recognize and obey international law and endeavor to work together. Now, when it comes to the obstacles, I also think that, of course, some countries do not recognize or accept the UN as the only mediator or arbiter on global issues. For example, on war, famine, drought, food security, climate change, etc. Some countries, of course, do not recognize or respect international law. Some countries do act unilaterally or act alone, and they do not obey multilateralism or just acting together in unison. So to try perhaps to overcome again these obstacles, countries must be equal and represented at the UN. And this can be achieved through more dialogue at the United Nations, calling for reforms there in order for the world to achieve equality.
So thank you. So yes, countries must work together, and you have some suggestions, practical suggestions how we would do it. We witnessed in the past 6 months how children, like the two of you and the rest of the assembly and the group, they have really worked together in a magnificent way. What can leaders of this world learn from the children when it comes to collaboration, you think?
Again, I think the heads of state should listen and hear the needs and interests of the children from the children themselves. For example, your manifesto of 2022 to be taken to the United Nations is a good start. Again, perhaps when the heads of states return to their countries from the General Assembly of 2022, could prioritize the Children's Manifesto in government programs, policies, under relevant ministries that are responsible for children. They should be required to report on progress to the children during the next session of the 78th General Assembly that will be held in 2023, for instance. And lastly, perhaps I could just also point out to you, Daniel and Mankhara, that I facilitated for our Minister of Social Development to address some of the issues you had raised in your manifesto of 2021.
Sounds good. We should bring it to the UN, and then you should follow up on that. What's your reflections on that? What do you think?
Well, I personally believe that children's rights is a great place to start for countries to collaborate, not just on children's rights themselves, but also on many other topics. At the end of the day, the idea of children's rights, it doesn't know any borders. It's something which affects children worldwide and doesn't not affect anyone. At the end of the day, it's a great way for countries to be able to find great ways to, find similarities between each other and generally be able to find better ways to collaborate to find solutions for all kinds of issues, not just children's rights.
Thank you, Daniel. So I can't wait to hear the manifesto that we should bring to the UN. So with that, I'd like to thank the panel. Thank you for your contribution. Thanks, Mr. Ambassador. And let's move on. Thank you.
Your generation should be listened to and should also make sure that it is being heard. Really a topic that will stay with your generation much more than with the older generations is disinformation. That as a topic, it wasn't there when I was your age. Yes, we learned a little bit in class about, propaganda, but that was then always related to either Nazi Germany or to communism in the Soviet Union. And disinformation, I also see that with my own kids, in calibrating whether things are real or not, and the whole struggle for the narrative and making sure people young and old get the right information, I think it is spot on. That is close to my heart as a foreign minister, is cross-border cooperation and making sure, we don't invent the wheel or anything that vaguely resembles the wheel one-on-one. But we do make sure that we do it, as is a tradition in the Netherlands, with as many friends as possible.
What were the 5 most important words that you got when you read the CGA 2022 manifesto?
I would have hoped that I've actually elucidated more or less on them, on these words by mentioning them. So youth participation and engagement, disinformation, education, cross-border cooperation. Those are the things that are the concepts and the words that struck me most.
What was your formula for success to get into the government, and what advice do you have for anyone else that would try to gain a high position like yourself in any government?
I think the biggest trick in life is that when you fall, you learn from it, you get up, and you move forward. I think that is, in a way, the essence of life.
Did you know that the Earth is flat? Have you realized that humankind has never actually been on the moon? Did you know that climate change isn't real? Dear friends, adults, and distinguished members of the UN General Assembly, we live in a time where we, The children of the world learn that truth is up for debate, where facts can be alternative and news can be fake. The first few phrases of this manifesto are just examples that we have encountered in our lives. Many more could be added. As a child, it is a frustrating, confusing, and sensitive time to grow up in. And for you, decision makers of the world, it is a frustrating, confusing, and sensitive time to lead people. Now, more than ever, we need to ensure that all people, big and small, can stand up to misinformation, radicalization, and exploitation. To that end, we need better education. That is why we are addressing you today. We represent the 2.2 billion children all over the world. Today, we are their microphone. Over the past 6 months, we, 80 children from 42 countries, have come together to discuss and share perspectives on the common challenges we face and how to solve them. 80 different perspectives, 80 different struggles. And yet, we have a common message. We need better education to solve the issues that threaten our existence. Not only widespread misinformation, but also the climate change that is making the earth crumble underneath our feet, making the rivers we swim in dry out, forcing families to leave their homes. The extreme poverty pushing an estimated 356 million children into a daily struggle to put food on their plate and a roof above their heads for barely $2 a day. Tyrants, dictators, and terrorists claiming children's lives right where we live, where we play, every day.
We want to thank you for letting us speak today and giving us the opportunity to bring this overall message of education to you. We stand at a crossroad after 2 years of COVID and a global health crisis where the right to education was stunted. In many parts of the world, in this time of vulnerability and insecurity, homeschooling was not an option due to the lack of computers, internet connection, or even electricity. We need your help to ensure education for all of us, no matter how we live, how we see the world, and what the balance is on our parents' bank account. We know that this task is enormous, but the impact of better education would be even bigger, because schools are not just schools. They are not just 4 walls with a lot of books and blackboards inside. They are the center of our local communities. Our schools are where we meet our friends, play sports, and eat our lunch together. Our schools are where we learn democracy in practice. Awareness created through education will help in solving the incomprehensible problems we face. Education is the key to solving all other issues. Education is the fundamental lens through which we see the world and form opinions. Thus, it is of utmost importance that it is open-minded and available to all. People that are educated are equipped to help in our struggle for a better future. Education gives us the tools to engage in society, to battle inequality, to counter injustice, and to take on the common responsibility of creating change. Unfortunately, education is still not a given in many regions of the world. According to UNESCO, about 258 million children are uneducated. That needs to change.
We need your help to ensure that schools are not only accessible. The schools of the future need to provide the ultimate sense of security. This is what we would like to call safe space education. Safe space education are schools where children and their grown-ups can feel safe that what they learn is right. A place where misinformation, conspiracy theories, and alternative facts are debated and debunked. Where we are equipped to think freely and ask questions without censorship, restraint, or fear of reprisal. Safe space education are schools that can be a safe haven for all children, no matter who they are, how they look, where they come from. Even the most remote rural areas should have a school with open doors to all, and where all are equal. Safe space education offers an inclusive learning environment for children with different learning abilities and learning styles. We need to build suitable and appropriate environments for learning that also cater to people who are not necessarily academically gifted, but who have other talents to nurture. Safe space education are schools that are free from violence of any kind, physical or mental. Education is crucial to our well-being, so we should be allowed to expect more than the bare minimum. To ensure safe space education for all, we need to work together across borders. Outsourcing from countries that have existing successful models of challenges faced. Sending professionals from countries that have a more developed education system to countries that are currently developing their education system. Higher income countries helping lower income countries, just as we have witnessed during the pandemic.
You might think that this is a message you have heard before. It is so obvious, simple, and predictable that children choose education as the topic to highlight. More than 200 years ago, then US President Thomas Jefferson noted that education is instrumental in happiness and freedom. Our question to you is simple. If this is all so banal, why haven't we fixed it yet? Why are we still talking about it? Unfortunately, listening is one of the sparse resources these days. We often witness governments not listening to their citizens, making policies with self-serving intentions, shutting down protests with violence, and by hiding important information from the public.
We need you to listen. Now, we need you to listen, learn, and lead. Not just for our sake, but for your own. For the world. Help us make safe space education the standard. Because this is the way to battle misinformation. Bridge the divide between people and their governments, and ultimately create world change. Children are more resourceful than you think. Stop placing us at the children's table. We are not the leaders of tomorrow. If you allow us a place at the table and listen to us, we are the leaders of today. If we have learned one thing when working together, 80 children from 42 countries from all continents, it is that we are creative, we are resourceful, and we are prepared to be a part of the solution to the biggest problems in the world. Let us be a part of the solution. Dear politicians, decision makers, and other adults, the Earth is not flat. Humankind has been on the moon several times. Climate change is, unfortunately, very real. But we need your help to make sure that generations to come get access to the education necessary to understand this world and all its vast complexity. Education enables change. Help us ensure safe space education for us, for you, for the world, and for generations to come. Thank you for your time.
Welcome back to the second debate here on stage in Billund. What a powerful message. Thank you to the three of you and to all the participants. First and foremost, also a warm welcome to you, to the former Secretary of the UN General Assembly, Mogens Lykketoft. And welcome to the three of you. We have Sarah from Pakistan. We have Grace from Burkina Faso, and we have Michele from Italy. Welcome, let's give them a hand.
Thank you.
So, let me start over here first, Mr. Mogens Lykketoft. As the former president of the 17th session of the UN General Assembly and a representative of world leaders, You took part of the General Assembly here last year. Just tell us, why do you think this is so important, this event, this summit?
I think that the power of the message we just heard and the ability to present it so powerful is illustration enough about the importance of this. What we are doing here is educating strong voices for the future, media leaders, opinion leaders for the world. And I really hope that the efforts here will materialize in governments, including much better on the national level and the United Nations, of course, on the international level, the voices of a new generation. Because the new generation has, in many ways, a better understanding of what the future needs to be than the other one. And you can see that in much of the global south, the young generation is a huge majority already of the citizens. It's different where we live. And I think maybe we need some quota system also in the political parties to make sure that the young generation is represented enough in this part of the world where the elderly, we elderly, are becoming more and more numerous in the equation. If we should represent the future of our people and our countries, there should be a much stronger voice like these brilliant young people.
Wow, what do you say? So, to you, we just heard two of your fellow participants, Sarah and Roberta, talk about the manifesto. And in the manifesto, they stressed the point about safe space education. Safe space education. Maybe it's a banal question, but just ask me, maybe you, Grace, yes. Why is it important to have good education available in all parts of the world?
I think education is essential and necessary in our existence, especially now. People tend to think that education is just about academic achievement, acquiring knowledge, being intelligent, but I think education is social, intellectual, and moral. Education is the process of learning how to be a global citizen. And a global citizen is someone who cares about the environment, someone who knows of other differences and accepts them. And right now we're facing a challenging time. Climate change is happening, global warming is happening, there's war in Ukraine, there's poverty, and there's terrorism in my country. And I think education represents this universal key that will open the door of all the solutions. And I believe in what Nelson Mandela said when he said that education is a weapon that we can use to change the world. And we all agree here that education is what we need, change is what we need now, and education is what we can use to have this change. I think you, us, and them, we all deserve this education, and education will bring this positive change in our world. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Wow. So, Mr. Mogens Lykketoft, Grace very eloquently described the importance of education. But we also talk about, or in the manifesto, they talk about safe education and truthful education. So what's your opinion on, are we able to provide that, and what can we do?
I think the Dutch minister talked very much precisely on this challenge we have on the social media, the propaganda from authoritarian regimes, the difficulty for each and every one of us to find out what's true and what's wrong. And education, of course, is the first and most important way to make people equipped to find out of that. It's not the only one, because it's about public services and the media. Neutral, truth-seeking media is also very important, but people that are well educated are also well equipped to demand that governments make sure that we have the access to true information from national media, because we are in a fight right now where it's not only about education or good media ourselves, it's also a kind of investment in information warfare to stop the infections coming to us from those who tell the wrong story. So it's not only weapons when we talk about Ukraine. It's information warfare, it's cyber warfare, where we have to avoid them breaking down the institutions, the systems, and the access to truth that are present in our societies.
Thank you very much. Let me move on a little bit. So we've heard Ms. Ambassador, we've heard Mr. Lykketoft talk about the necessity for children and the world leaders to work together. You go as far as in your manifesto to say we want a seat at the table, which I thought was a powerful statement. Maybe you, Sarah. So again, if you got a seat at the table, why is the voice of the children so important on these critical world issues that we hear about?
Thank you so much for your question. So I believe that children's voices are important in today's time because we are the ones who have to deal with the consequences of decisions that are made today. We are the future, so we have to make sure that in the future there's still a world that can prosper and where we can live, like, prosperously. Mm-hmm. And just as, like, for example, if you're talking about a group of people, if you're discussing about a group of people, it's preferred that that group of people is present in those discussions so they can share their input. Just like that, today, the decisions being made, we should be included in that so that we can share our input to make sure that our opinions are understood and so that our voices are heard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to take your comments, Sarah, and bring it right back to you, Mr. Lykketoft. They want a seat at the table. They want to be heard. But let's be practical here. In what way can the United Nations and governments alike include the children's voice more?
I think the United Nations could work with a model like the one we have in Denmark, actually, with the Children's Parliamentary Assembly, where the responsible people in the UN system should be present and answer questions and discuss with representatives of the youth. Of course, it's a complicated system to establish, but something like that will be the most quick way to bring the opinions of the young generation into the Assembly of the United Nations. Of course, it's also up to each and every national government to send delegations to the UN General Assembly, for instance, including youth representatives, as we have done in Denmark for several years. But each and every government should do that, and that will in itself be the voices of the new generation much louder in the halls of the United Nations.
Okay, thank you. Michele, at the end, I've heard you and your fellow participants in the manifesto talk about that you want to be involved in the decision making. We just talked about that because it's your future. But I noticed the choice of words. You actually say that if you're involved, it will be a better future. So just tell me why is that?
So normally when we are posed a problem, we try to solve that problem as best as we can. But before trying to solve it, we must at least have a clear picture of what that problem is. And that involves listening to all points of views and viewing this problem in all possible ways to have the best understanding. Children are no exception. We, as Roberto said before, are over 50 children from 42 countries around the world. And that's what we learned, that having different cultures, different points of views is only helpful because we, as a consequence, create the most creative answers and the best. So usually, no.
Go on.
Usually, the opinion is that children are immature and less instructed than adults. Not only isn't that not true, moreover, children are much more creative, and this could only bring an advantage when it comes to decision making. And another thing, we say we want a place at the table, that's true. We are asking you to give us the world into our hands. And in the end, it is our future. So sooner or later, we will have the world into our hands. It just depends on when you want that to come to us. You know, statistics show that children think about important issues in the world, like climate change, much more than adults. We have the will, we have the skills, let us play our role.
Well done. And Michele, you're bringing on some really difficult and complex issues, but with the level of creativity, as you mentioned, yeah, I think you deserve a spot at the table, absolutely, and you'll make it a better world. So thank you for your contribution. And I think let these wise words be the last here in the debate. Let us continue the work that we talked about with the children, with the heads of states and governments. I'd like to thank you all for participating or watching to the perspectives of the former President of the UN General Assembly, the Ms. Ambassador, the ministers, and so forth, and of course all the participants of this year's Children's General Assembly. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now I'm sure tonight you will want to revisit what happened today, and you can do that online. You can also hear more in-depth interviews with some of the people you saw here on the screen. Just go to the website capitalofchildren.com, and you can view it all. Don't miss the inspiration from that. And on that final note, let us hear what the UN Envoy of Youth think about education and how the world can collaborate with children and young people. Thank you.
Education is the foundation of young people's lives. It's not a favor that we are doing for young people. It's their fundamental, basic human right to have an education. Education is the lifeblood in our society, that education has to be a top priority again for countries around the world. A politician who was in school 30, 40 years ago might be so distant from what actually goes in a classroom. But Daniel and Mankara, you know best what goes in your classroom, and you are the best ones to say this is how we want to see the change in our educational system. So really giving a voice to young people, putting them at the center of educational conversations and decision making is, I think, the second step we can take to achieve SDG 4 and the targets under it.
How can countries collaborate more effectively to find solutions to global issues?
They don't really follow up. I think this is one of the biggest challenges that I see in the international system. We have so many nicely printed strategies and policies and resolutions, but very little of them get implemented. So I think the best way that countries can work with each other to solve the biggest global issues is to hold each other accountable. We cannot divide and conquer. We have to unite and achieve our common goals.
So what do you think are some obstacles which heads of state can face when trying to solve
a global issue, because we see many times a large distinction between, domestic issues and global issues, and many times countries struggle to unite.
So we need innovation, we need creativity, we need new ways of problem solving. And this is why I always push for more younger people in politics, more women in politics, because the more diverse our decision-making bodies are, the more diverse our solutions will be, the more creative our solutions will be. You should never wait for an invitation, right? You should always take initiative and you should always take action. Start with little actions. Either it is about your own life, it is about your own family, something that you do in your school, in your university. Starting small and scaling up and showing that you're actually not waiting for politicians to take action. You are taking action yourselves within your limited power is a good way to always show to older decision makers that this is how things are done, that this is how you walk the talk. All the best for the General Assembly and all the other activities.
That's a wrap. We've now concluded today's event, and we thank you all for joining us online and from all around the world. These young but sharp minds have given us amazing topics to think about, and we ask you to reflect on their proposals to ensure change happens.
Children's voices are impactful, and if their ideas get introduced to the whole world, it will become a more inclusive place. We're looking forward to receiving the invitation to have a seat at the table. We hope you enjoyed these presentations, and we wish you the best. Thank you so much for watching online. We hope to see you again at the Capital of Children for the Children's General Assembly September Summit next year. Thank you. Bye.